it, so I'm not sure if something happened when I came in and we switched over. That could be it. Are you recognizing some people?
No, I'm seeing live transcription. Closed captioning has been enabled.
I've enabled them. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, don't apologize. That's okay.
I don't know where they went to. They were there all the time. Oh,
I
well.
thought so. But thank you so much, Sophia. Brilliant. Okay, we're good to go. So we'll get started. And as I've done previously in our sessions, I like to begin the formal part of our workshops or presentations with our land acknowledgement from an advocacy and activist standpoint. So we would like to acknowledge that many Indigenous nations across Turtle Island and across the world have longstanding relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories and lands upon which our advocacy and community leadership occur. We would like to acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of these nations, as the struggle for Indigenous rights is deeply connected to all human rights work. When we recognize the systemic and social connections within our work, it is also essential that we refuse to historicize these struggles, because doing so ignores the impact of colonial oppression which persists today. In our advocacy efforts, we are committed to disrupting and dismantling the systems of oppression that have dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their lands and denied their rights to self-determination. This work is essential to human rights work across the world. And I want to also make mention that it is also International Day of Visibility for the transgender community. And so a special shout out and love to the transgender community. And hopefully we will be able to continue to fight for human rights for all, but today thinking especially about the transgender community. So I'm going to just do a very quick introduction. I should first of all say who I am. I know you can read it on your screen for those who are visually able. My name is Karen Tim. I am, my pronouns are she, her. I'm a white woman with purple tinted glasses and long straight hair. I'm wearing a purple headband. My background is Black with our 9 logo, which is a rainbow infinity symbol with the words neurodivergent infinity network of educators on top of that. I am the founder of the neurodivergent infinity network of educators, which is a global advocacy group, an affinity group also that works at arm's length to our local school board here, but we're very proud to be a global organization. And as a team, we have created, started the ball rolling for this Intersectional Infinity Summit alongside a number of wonderful community partners, which organically keeps growing this wonderful network. So proud to be here. And so thrilled with how things are going. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce our presenter, our awesome human who is with us today, Alyssa Hillary Zisk. And this is also on our website too, for those that want to refer back. Alyssa Hillary Zisk is an autistic math teacher and neuroscientist with too many research interests and no intention of narrowing it down. I love that. Most of those interests can somehow follow disability and communication, neurodiversity and representation, or neurodiversity and queerness. They use augmentative and alternative communication, also known as AAC, some of the time. And again, an absolute honor and privilege to have you in this space with us. We're working so hard to try and broaden the narrative, raise understanding, and move towards acceptance of the autistic and otherwise neurodivergent community. So welcome, Alyssa. Thank you so much for being here.
All right. I think that means it's time for me to say things.
If you are ready, we are here for you.
So I'm gonna start saying stuff now.
Love it.
Woo. I'm also going to make sure that I can actually see the chat, because you should feel free to ask me questions at any time. I am a teacher. I am accustomed to handling questions in real time. and in fact can be thrown off by not getting questions in real time. Please ask me stuff. So, who is this human? I'm an autistic researcher. I study augmentative and alternative communication along with using it. I actually study it both in the context of similar to my use needs. I use both AAC and speech, and totally unrelated to my needs. My PhD was with brain-computer interfaces. In the picture on the right, that is a picture of me, a white human with dark hair and glasses. I have written on a whiteboard, this is my most used communication board, relevant to today's talk because that whiteboard was the whiteboard that was in reach of student seating in a classroom that I had several of my graduate math classes in. So that was, in fact, at one point, my most used communication board in the sense of augmentative and alternative communication. Assistiveware did a survey a while back that suggested that part-time AAC use or using both AAC and speech is pretty common among adults who use AAC. So my speech might sound comparatively fluent for this population when it's working, but using both is pretty common. Also, on an unrelated note, I work for Assistiveware now, and they are running a different kind of survey about terminology preferences and AAC. So if you have some kind of connection to AAC and feel like giving me more data to play with later, that's a thing that you can do. That is, that's this thing, I just threw it in the chat. Anyways, what is AAC? AAC includes all the ways that we share our ideas without talking. This is the inclusive definition that the American Speech, Language, and Hearing Association gives. I like it better because the other one talks about it as a clinical practice. And when I use AAC, there's no clinicians involved. It's not actually a clinical practice. This can include things like speech generating devices. I have speech generating. I have a speech generating device on my laptop. This is the tool that I use most when I am giving presentations on my computer and cannot use speech, or where speech would not be a good choice. It can include picture cards, letterboards, sign language, pen and paper, typing. It is not unusual for people to refer to oral speech as mouth words. I do that. There's a lot of different words that people use to talk about AAC. Part-time use, full-time use, multimodal communication. Which words we like and don't like is actually the point of the survey that I mentioned that's currently ongoing. So here's a question for you all. Do you use AAC? Spoilers, yes you do. Yes you do. What are some ideas for ways that you might be using AAC?
Text.
Yes. Texting, chat box, Siri, love it, yes. Social media, yes. Love it. I see people talking about texting, which was, yep, chat boxes. Thank you, Laura. dictation software. That seems like it would fit with the hands-free texting and potentially with Siri. Writing on the whiteboard, that's what I do a lot. Other visual aids while teaching and presenting. What else? I see social media mentioned. Yes, that is absolutely a thing. I talked about that at the International Communication Association a while back. DMs, facial expressions, hand gestures, painting, music, email. Yes, these can all fall under AAC. It's super normal to use these alternatives. The only thing that is different in many cases is that if you're using one of them in a situation where most people would socially expect that you are using speech, because your ability, like your body, mind, your abilities dictate that speech is not a functional option at that time, that's when people talk about it as AAC, but we all use it. So AAC for autistic people, because this is a neurodiversity and autism related event. Speech alone does not always meet all of our communication needs. Early intervention is super problematic in a variety of ways, but the reference that I have for, yes, a lot of us are minimally speaking or don't really use speech effectively, talks about that still being the case after early intervention. Many of us just don't use speech effectively for our communication needs. And for those of us who do, there are still kinds of speech we can experience that mean it's not going to meet all of our needs. Intermittent speech, a person can sometimes speak, but not always. I have this pretty significantly. Unreliable speech, a person may say things that don't match their intended meaning and or preferences. I have a very little bit of this in that unintentional triggering of scripts can be an issue. But I don't think that I have much more of this than a typical speaker. Remember, when someone asks, "How are you?" it's very typical to answer, "I'm fine, thanks, and you?" Considering the state of the world, it's reasonably likely that you have said this when it was not true. And insufficient speech. A person speaks accurately, but not sufficiently to fully express everything they want to say. I have this as well. I can always say more typing than I can say speaking. So what you're hearing today from me, it is true. If you sat me in front of a keyboard and gave me infinite time, I would absolutely be able to say it better. The thing is that I do not type as fast as I speak. I type about half as fast, maybe a third. Now, why AAC for the teacher? Because like I said, this is about AAC in education, and that means both ways. It's not just about the students. When people talk about AAC in the classroom, we usually mean integrating it for students. And that's important. Please do it. Absolutely. It matters. It helps. And if a teacher's using AAC, maybe we mean the way it was done in Speechless. I have a couple of screen stills from that show from Trivia Night, in which the teacher used the eye gaze software to participate in Trivia Night to put him on an even footing with his student who also uses that to communicate, or the pointer. That's a thing that is done. So is modeling by teachers who can rely on speech for the benefit of students who are learning to use AAC. But we don't usually mean that the teacher needs it for their own sake. Here I have an index card that I wrote on. Blank 4-inch by, yes, I like speech. I like what I've heard of from Speechless. Yeah. Blank 4-inch by 6-inch index cards are a good size to write on and then leave with the student. I've underlined the words leave with the student. They don't even need to remember what my answer was because it's written in front of them. I then have the citation Hillary and Harvey 2018, page 226, because this is a quote from a book chapter that I wrote, Teaching with Augmentative and Alternative Communication. We don't usually mean that it's the teacher who needs AAC, because then we usually get things, quotes like, for those who earn their living by speaking, e.g. teacher, lawyer, broadcaster. A motor speech disorder can mean the end of a career. This is a quote from my motor speech disorders textbook. When I took motor speech disorders as a class as part of studying for a PhD in neuroscience, I was not a fan, being a teacher who uses augmentative and alternative communication at least some of the time. Or Sarah had a stroke during her first year of college. As a result, she was paralyzed on one side of her body, had some speech disfluencies, and acquired learning disabilities that caused some difficulties with reading. One professor wondered how she could become an elementary school teacher because the literature says that young students will become better readers when others read aloud to them. This is from a book about educators with disabilities. These are both pointing to the assumption that if you cannot consistently rely on speech, you're not going to be a teacher. We can do better. In Sarah's case, why could not parent volunteers, older students, or even books on tape provide this important experience to her students? They know we can do better. That doesn't mean that better has actually been done, but we know that we can. We could also use Kurzweil or similar software to read books aloud. Students with, say, dyslexia already have access to some amount of books being read aloud. We can use that when it's the teacher too. Reading with our own AAC devices. You can program the book in and read aloud with AAC, and we need to do better. I'm a teacher. Even in a supportive department, the first suggestion that I got when I mentioned that my ability to speak varies over time, sometimes I can and sometimes I can't. The first suggestion I received was to call. I'm holding up my cell phone now. Call for backup if I can't talk. Please explain to me how I'm supposed to do this. I don't actually have AAC set up to work on a phone call. So I can't make this phone call. I was teaching 10 minutes away from the department office in a 50-minute class. If somebody started sprinting the instant I made the call, then then it could be 1/5 of the class time that is lost to waiting for the backup. That's not going to work, especially since immediate sprinting is not how this goes. So I want a plan AAC, not a plan rescue. Nobody in the department really had ideas for how a plan AAC would work. And the other departments that I have since taught in similarly have not really had ideas for plan AAC. I've figured those out on my own. We also get stereotyped and pushed into special education if we are disabled and teach. So how many of you coming in, like when you first heard that I use AAC and that I'm a teacher, how many of you figured that I teach kids with disabilities? Or students with disabilities, since you may have picked up that it's college. You thought I taught neuroscience at the college level. I mean, I do. That's not the first thing I've taught, but it is what I'm currently teaching. Thank you, Jinx. The problem is that you'd usually be right if you thought that I was teaching students with disabilities. Also, there's a tendency to assume dishonesty or faking when disabilities vary over time. So I do know someone who was almost kicked out of her program over this. She graduated without teaching certification. This is also what's behind those memes about how it's a miracle when a wheelchair user stands up, even though most wheelchair users can in fact stand and walk a little bit. Not all, but many. It's common, it's normal. Disabilities varying over time is super normal. So how do we support AAC in education? One, we make use of what's available for everyone. I have brought back the picture of my most used communication board. We are making use of what's already there. There's already a whiteboard in the math classroom. Sometimes it's a blackboard, sometimes it's a chalkboard, but there's generally a board, and teachers without complex communication needs are already writing on the board. This is super normal until I'm writing without speaking. Also, most of my students at this point have laptops, so installing some free software on a laptop, this is making use of what's available for everyone. The speech generating device software on my laptop that I showed you earlier in this presentation, that wasn't actually designed for AAC. It's a free text-to-speech program available to everyone. It's open source. And spelling, I write, I type. It means I get all the words. It's just, you know, possibly slower. Typing math especially, because yes, I'm teaching neuroscience right now, but I have primarily been a math teacher. It's pretty slow. Or in the lab. This is about feature matching when the environment is some of the features. So I was teaching an electrical engineering lab course. Like I said, I've taught a bunch of different stuff. Students are working on circuit boards individually. There's no lecture component, and I'm answering student questions as they work. Like I said, I'm used to live questions. There's only one whiteboard in the room, and it's not near the lab benches. So I could write on that whiteboard, but it's reasonably likely that there's already other stuff on it. And it's not near where I'd be answering the student questions, because I'm usually wanting to look at the circuit board at the same time that I'm answering their questions. Space is limited. I can't really carry my iPad around the classroom or put it on the lab table. There might not be space. I probably should get a harness. I hadn't at the time. I still haven't. My laptop is even bigger and harder to carry around. But index cards are small. They fit in my pockets. This is nice. And money. I was a graduate student. I had an iPad. It had Proloquo for text and FlipWriter on it. I had a laptop. It had eSpeak on it. That's what I showed you today. The department supplied whiteboard markers to instructors, so I could use that without needing to pay for it. Standard index cards and pens are cheap, and I'm a graduate student doing research in the library. I already had a decent number of them. So what do? I stuck a bunch of index cards and a pen in my pocket. And I wrote on the index cards. I have pictures of the index cards up. These index cards were from a day when a student installed all of their LED light components on their circuit board backwards. They are directional. You generally want to install the flat side of the flat wire with the other flat wire so that the directionality is correct. They did not do that. In the initial troubleshooting, I had not yet identified the problem. So I suggested two options. One, leave it be, redo that connection first if the circuit doesn't work. And two, keep trying to unsolder and resolder the specific connection they were having problems with. Later, because they redid the connection and still nothing worked, I pointed out that the battery was not actually plugged in. I pointed out that if you want to check voltages and currents, start checking the LEDs. Are any of the lights broken? Are any of the resistors broken? Is the clock that drives the changes in voltage over time, this was an alternating current involved, is it working correctly? Are the pieces installed in the correct direction? We go through all of these, it's backwards, and you can actually see, if you are visually able, the pattern of all of the things I suggested. And if you forget a step, you can go back and look at it. So challenges in the lab. My handwriting's not very good. If you look at this last stage, my handwriting is not great. This is about as good as it gets. So sorry, students, I don't have good handwriting. Some students predicted how they think they'd feel. This was awkward. Students who don't read what I wrote. This is a problem. Writing, and then they're not reading it. And to the best of my knowledge, they did not have disabilities affecting reading. They just were expecting spoken answers and chose not to read. So the message brought to you by every instructor that ever lived: the answers are in the syllabus. I'm not sure, Jinx. Jinx asks, I wonder if that's specific to AAC or if they are the same students who don't listen and don't read when things are posted online. I did notice that they mostly listened when I said things to them with speech in real time. I'm uncertain how much they read the things that were posted online. This may or may not be a totally unique to AAC issue, but it's definitely an issue. Then Another environment where I teach is in an online chat room. I like this one a lot. The shape of the class, the way the classroom looks has changed a bit since I took that picture. I've been teaching for the Art of Problem Solving. This is the Art of Problem Solving Schoolhouse for 5 or 6 years as a teacher, and I started working for them at all in 2010. The internet has changed, but yes, videos for all the content because of undiagnosed dyslexia. That's almost certainly a thing. That is almost certainly a thing, and accessibility is important. But nowadays, this online chat room is one of my most used communication boards. It is already all text-based. My students at the Art of Problem Solving online, they don't actually know that I sometimes can speak and sometimes can't. They've never heard my voice. They probably never will. Yes, even many who try to listen may not retain the information for long if it is not written, typed, or recorded in some way for later reference. I am a fan of multimodality for this reason. I like to give people information in multiple formats to the extent that I can. If I cannot speak, you are not going to get it spoken via human voice. But I do have speech generating software. So, scripting. The first 2 lines of every new class is, my name is Alyssa and I am the instructor for this course. And my bio, which is a little different from the bio that I have was used here, because in this case, it is much more relevant that I do math. Communication is so interconnected to executive functionings. Yes, I will wander off on tangents if I do not have a visual aid. That is why I have slides today. These are my notes. These slides are my notes. So Alyssa first joined Art of Problem Solving as a grader in 2010. They recently completed a PhD in interdisciplinary neuroscience at the University of Rhode Island, doing work on brain-computer interfaces. Their master's degree is in math, and they also previously studied mechanical engineering and Mandarin Chinese. Alyssa placed 6th at Massachusetts State Math Counts in 2006 and participated in both the AMC and Amy for all 4 years of high school. In their spare time, Alyssa reads and sometimes writes science fiction and fantasy, plays Ultimate, and makes geometric art. Typing all that out in one go would take a while, but it's a script. I don't need to type this out every time. I copy and paste. It's very convenient. Seriously, scripting, it's important. Scripts serve a valuable purpose. So when we're talking about echolalia, when we're talking about repeating words, when we're talking about Gestalt language acquisition, this is important. Scripts serve a valuable purpose. They do all the hard typing stuff ahead of time and frees teachers up to be able to teach. That's the official line from Art of Problem Solving for why we have scripts. The difference between average typing and speech rates forces some preparation. This is good. Also, in the math classroom, typing math in LaTeX is even slower than regular typing, because if you've ever encountered HTML code, LaTeX is kind of like that. It's a markup language. Script modification can be quicker than typing something new. I would really love my AAC devices to be able to store fill in the blank style scripts where it's not saving a whole phrase, it's saving pieces and then it goes straight to the blank for me to edit it. So solving a problem, increasing the length of a rectangle by 20% and decreasing the width of the rectangle by 25% results in decreasing the area of the rectangle by X%. What are all possible values of X? LaTeX, arg. LaTeX, it's my job. So my script says we could start with a square of side length 10. So we start with an area of 100. What do we have after increasing the length and decreasing the width? My students suggest an initial side length, but they don't suggest 10. So I'm going to need to modify my script. But it is much quicker for me to change these two numbers than it is for me to type out the whole thing. They suggest 100. I add 3 zeros to my script. Side length 100, area 10,000. So much easier, so much faster. Comparable to speaking rates now that I'm just modifying a script. And yes, scripting is on purpose. Don't let them pretend they're saving you. Welk's chance in a supernova. Let's get down to business. But I'm probably going to replace the second half with something other than defeating the Huns. And because I'm a mathematician, for all epsilon greater than 0, there exists. Everyone uses some amount of scripting. The question is how much. So can we apply this to other workplaces? Yes, we can. What do the typical speakers already use here to supplement or replace speech? You can also apply this to classrooms. What are the students who do speak already using to supplement or replace speech? Can I, or can the AAC users, can the students who cannot consistently rely on speech also use these methods? Can we use it as speech replacements? Do we need additional AAC tools and strategies beyond the ones that everyone uses? What's the physical environment in the workplace, in the classroom? School essentially is the work of a student, so workplace, classroom. What's the physical environment? Whiteboards? Conference tables? Cubicles? Do my coworkers, do my classmates, do my clients have needs that may affect my choices? Conflicting access needs exist. I may not be the only disabled person in the room. In fact, particularly at disability conferences and in disability studies and things about neurodiversity, it's reasonable to assume that I am not. Funding. What can the workplace supply? What can the school supply? What can the teacher supply? What can the student bring from home that they already have and which will not be consumed? What do we have? Can we be creative? Can we make something work that is not $1,000 waiting on insurance to pay out? And how do we apply this to AAC in the classroom in its more usual meeting? So, same questions. Can my students use these same methods? What's the classroom environment like? Yes, the default for normal has to be shifted entirely. Rows of individual desks, shared tables, whiteboards, non-standard seating, bouncy balls, beanbag chairs, reading nooks, the floor. I personally am a fan of the floor. I have done research meetings during my PhD sitting on the floor under a table. Thank you, Dr. Mancodia, for just going with that. Are there multiple output options? Even if your students need a specific input method, can they show other people their messages? Flipwriter, I just show you my screen, what I've typed on it. Reading messages aloud, text-to-speech software, or with a classmate. I have had classmates read my messages aloud, both because of people with auditory processing issues who didn't understand my electronic voice, and because of I haven't always had good text to speech that worked in Mandarin Chinese, my second language, both at once. I did that during a presentation. I projected my screen and used this text to speech. So for students, things that we can do, environmental supports for full communication. We can tape letterboards to schoolroom desks. Are we going to? I don't know. Should we? I think we should. At least we should make it an option. If some students for visual reasons would prefer not to have it because visual distractions, fine, but it should be available. We should have enough of them that we can do that. You can put giant core word and symbol boards at the fronts of classrooms that students can use to supplement their speech or to replace it if speech is not working when they're up at the front of the classroom. Have whiteboards that people can write on. Have communication books in emergency bags. Have large communication boards in the middle of playgrounds. Hopefully the people who consistently need them or who frequently need them have their own. But a person's first time meeting AAC can happen anywhere. Plus, sometimes people forget things. I've done that. Picture menus. I've seen this in the context of traveling abroad. When I was in China, in the big touristy areas like near the terracotta warriors in Xi'an, I'd noticed that particularly in those areas, they often had picture menus along with the main text menus. And this was meant for foreign tourists who didn't necessarily speak or read Chinese, but it can be relevant for AAC users. Wearable AAC options isn't something that I've used personally much, but if it's wearable, it's with you all the time. I've occasionally been asked, can my students do what you do? So a recent question that I covered is a math teacher. The perimeter of an equilateral triangle exceeds the perimeter of a square by 1989 centimeters. The length of each side of the triangle exceeds the length of each side of the square by d centimeters. The square has a perimeter greater than 0. How many positive integers are not possible values for d? Who wants to try to solve this problem right now? Anybody? I see some heads shaking. I'm guessing that this is not what you want to do right now. Can you answer this question? Even given more time, can you do it? What if you knew? Only if you use music notes instead. Talk to Julia Bascom. She might know how to do it. I always need to read it again to process it. That is fair. Assume that you get to do that. What if you knew the answer was one of 0, 9, 221, 663, or infinitely many? And you just need to pick which one of those is correct. Maybe if this is a problem you don't want to solve, maybe your students' disabilities aren't the reason that they can't do what I do. Maybe it's that they have different interests and they don't actually want to be a math teacher. Play to their interests, not to mine. So, takeaways. 1, our AAC systems need to be as portable as we are. This is important for AAC for autistic students because we move around. We don't necessarily sit at one desk for the length of the class, and we don't necessarily have all our classes in the same place. Also, if we're in elementary school, we have recess. We need to be able to communicate at recess. That's a thing. Lunch. Multiple output formats can provide additional flexibility. Projecting what I say to a screen, showing you my screen, text to speech. You should be modeling, if you're in a situation where modeling is relevant, you should be modeling many forms of communication. Many autistic people will grow up to be multimodal communicators. In fact, everyone does, but we may grow up to continue using AAC as a big, important part of how we're communicating. You can start modeling multiple ways of communicating from day one. This will help normalize it because we really, really need communication methods beyond just speech to be considered normal. Communication that is not just speech is an everyone thing. Speech is a some people thing. Maybe a most people, probably a most people thing, but it's not an everyone thing. We should be integrating access to a variety of communication methods within each environment to provide access for all communicators, including the ones who use speech sometimes in AAC sometimes, including the ones who do not use speech, including the ones who we don't think of as using AAC because their alternative methods are considered normal. If the accommodation is already built into the course design for everyone, it's not special, that's a good thing. Exceptions are not access. Accommodations are exceptions and therefore not access. If it's built in, if you don't have to get special permission, that's access. Variability in speech abilities over time and between environments can make AAC valuable even to fluent seeming speakers. As far as I know, I sound pretty fluent at the moment. Maybe weird, but I don't think disfluent is the description. So think of all your autistic students. Think of every autistic person as a potential AAC user, regardless of their perceived speaking abilities. If they don't need it, then even when it's available, they're probably not going to use it. People tend to default to what's easiest for them in terms of communication. So offer it, let them decide what they need. AAC users can be teachers. Given the audience here, I'm guessing that we're comparatively good on that point, but in the broader world, this needs double emphasis. No, really, we can be teachers. It's a thing. Introducing your kids to adults who use AAC and have the jobs they want to have is a good idea. Kids will change their ideas of what they want to be when they grow up as they grow up. That is a very common thing. I have a couple of jobs currently. One of them is being a math teacher, and I actually did call that one as a kid. But being an AAC researcher, I did not call as a kid. But showing us possibilities, it's important. Examples show existence and possibility. For them, we believe in what we can see. And for you, you need to know it's possible. You need to know that your students who want to be whatever it is they want to be can do it, that people like them can do it, that they're not chasing the impossible. Though chasing the impossible can be interesting. We have tricks that work. And yeah, a couple minutes left. So what questions do you all have? I'm still choosing what I want to be when I grow up. Aren't we all? Ba-doop, ba-doop, ba-doop. And hiccups. Message for families of children who don't know they may be non-speakers. If you're not sure if they need AAC, if you're not sure yet whether or not your kid needs AAC, try it. If it helps, that's a yes. If it doesn't help, but they're still not speaking, try more things. Stop trying to force mouth words. Mouth words are sometimes useful. I'm using them now, but throw in all the other options. It's not mouth words or AAC with AAC as a last resort. It's AAC for everyone, mouth words for some. Share, do I feel comfortable sharing if I'm able to predict when you may have a nonverbal moment? Yes, I'm aware of several predictive factors. One, my total energy levels. The more energy that I have, the more likely it is that I will be able to speak. Two, physical health. If I'm physically ill, speech can give out on me much more easily than when I'm physically well. So acute illness, speech is more likely to go. Sensory triggers, if I am exposed to strobe lights, I am very likely to be non-speaking for a while thereafter. Yes, health is in bless you, response to giggle, hiccup, burp, belch. And the amount of speaking that I have already had to do that day. I am much more likely to lose speech on days when I teach. In particular, it is much more likely to happen after I teach because I've already used like an hour of talking. I will be quite amused if it comes out that I am non-speaking for my panel later, because then I would be using mouth words for the AAC presentation and AAC for the presentation that is not about AAC. That would be funny. Also, fun fact, I mentioned that I speak 2 languages, English and Mandarin. My can speak versus can't speak versus can kind of speak. In those 2 languages, they are correlated, but they're not the same. There are times when I can speak one language, but not the other. And that goes both ways. So I can have Chinese, but not English for mouth words, or English, but not Chinese. Am I aware of any good children's books on AAC? Children's books are really not my area anymore because I don't teach young children. And I don't have any children. But that would be a thing that I'd love to know. Neuroclastic story. Karen says, I love the neuroclastic story, room for us all, normalizing that we are all different and need to be accepted. It's a nice thought. I am now on my further resources slide. Ask me I'm an AAC user. I'm a moderator there. Ask me I'm autistic. The AAC users community and verbal AAC users community are just for people who actually use it. There's some YouTube channels, there's some blogs. AssistivWare has done some nice posts. When I lose speech, do I notice it declining and requiring more effort before being unable to speak, or is it like a switch? It goes both ways. I can actually feel speech starting to drop off a bit at the moment, but as you can tell, it is still here. Speech is still working for the moment. Let's see, I think stop screen sharing. And if you have a connection to AAC, I'm going to throw the survey in one more time. Give me data. Let me analyze stuff. I like to do research. Thank you all.
Alyssa, thank you so much. I can't type quickly enough for me to do a proper concluding thank you this way. And I think what I should do is script it next time, have it prepared, copy and paste it in the chat. But I also want to be organic and authentic in this moment. And I'm so, so thankful that you joined us, that you highlighted not only your personal experiences and reflections, but also shared from your professional experiences, because I think when we blend those and we acknowledge those lived experiences and incorporate them into our professional learning, that's when we really see change happen. And I'm so excited that you will be part of our panel later. Hey, if you are using AAC during our panel, all the power to you, because we have to try to really be our authentic selves. And I myself, I've said to some people, I'm situationally mute. I didn't understand that until really working with Kieran Rose back in the fall and reflecting on my own identity. And it makes so much sense. But when you present as somebody who is communicating with mouth speak or mouth words verbally and other settings, all of a sudden it's, like, I know Jacqueline, one of my good friends and members of the 9, has seen it, how it can change and it can be unpredictable. So I think when educators ask these questions, like you said, ask me I'm an AAC user is such a tremendous resource. And I think that we need to amplify the voices of our non-speakers, our part-time speakers, our AAC users, because it's not normalized yet, even though it's really not, right? And I'm just so honored and thrilled that you could be here as part of our Intersectional Infinity Summit. I think this is the beginning of a beautiful, I'm going to fangirl Alyssa now. I'm adding you to my to my list of heroes to the community. And thank you for giving of yourself today, both today and for our panel. Like I said, just so great. We are trying to change the world, and you are a really big part of this. I know Jordan was here and did a Q&A the other day. We received a video from Jay as well. So yay. Yeah, so we have to amplify these voices, and the more we normalize alternate communication, the more really inclusive things will be, right? So I just thank you so, so much. I want to also thank everybody who has joined us both in the Zoom call for this session and for those who joined us via the live stream. We want to make it as accessible as possible for you. And because of time zones, we will be providing a recording later on. We'll take the recording of the Zoom call and we'll tidy up and put it on our YouTube channel as well. Any last thoughts from you, Alyssa, before we say goodbye to everyone?
Thank you all.
That's exactly it, right? Thank you so much.
I'm gonna eat lunch now.
Yes, we all need, right, self-care. Thank you for reminding us earlier. Thank you so much,
Eat
everybody.
That was
food.
amazing.
Address bodily needs.
That's right. And thank you again, Maxine, for co-hosting. So appreciate it. And Sophia, if you're there, thank you so, so much. I'm going to end the recording now. Thank you. Actually, Maxine is